Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the webinar, Factors to Consider When Evaluating Core HRIS and Talent Management Solutions, sponsored by Cultivate Consulting, Inc., and presented today by Rebecca Murray. To the live attendees, this webinar has been pre-approved for HR credits, an HRCI webcast recertification credit, an HRCI e-learning credit, and a World at Work credit. Please stay on the line for the entire webinar to ensure you receive these credits. Emails will be sent out to all attendees containing a link to the certifications page where you can obtain the credits earned, upgrade to the recertification program, and access the individual e-learning webcast path. Any questions to the presenter today can be typed into the questions pane on the GoToWebinar control panel and sent in. I will now turn it over to our presenter, Rebecca Murray.
Thank you so much, Natasha, and thank you all for joining us today. Today, we will be taking a look at factors to consider when evaluating a core HRIS or talent management solution. My name is Becky Murray, and I will be walking you through today's presentation. On the agenda today, we're going to start with some brief introductions and then get right into our presentation. So we'll be talking about why do we need an HRIS and or talent management system. So basically, there's probably a business need that's driving you to it, whether it's reporting or consolidated data, what have you. After that, we'll be taking a look at the selection process, so the actual steps that you can and should follow when evaluating a system. We will then look at some factors to consider, and these are factors outside of basic functionality, which is of course extremely important, but sometimes we forget about some other factors that should also be considered when weighing different options. We will also look at characteristics of a great system and kind of the concept of a good and great system, and why a good system isn't necessarily a bad thing even when compared to a great system. We will finish up with some tips, just a few things to keep in mind that you should plan for during your evaluation process. And then we'll wrap up by bringing everything together. If we've got time, do some Q&A, and I'll share my contact information in case you need to get a hold of me. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, my name is Becky Murray, and I am, going on a little over 10 years as an employee, talent, and HRIS consultant. And I specialize in process consulting and HR transformations. I'm actually based in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you have been to any of my other presentations on HR.com, then you probably know that working with HR and working with talent management and helping people come up with some really great solutions is a passion of mine. So I'm excited to be here with you today and presenting this content to you. My company is part of the Illumiti group. We serve more than 200 customers across all industries. So we're sponsoring this session today. We primarily focus our work in North America, although many of our customers do actually have a global footprint. We've got 8 offices globally, about 350 consultants, and we work with customers of all sizes. We do business processes and transformations for all areas of business. My group, Cultivate, focuses on HR, HCM, and talent, and we are implementers of SAP SuccessFactors, which is a full HCM solution with fully integrated talent management. Okay, let's dive into our content. First, I'm just going to start with a little introduction to the concept of an HRIS system and a talent management system. Sometimes they stand alone, sometimes they stand together. This particular timeline that I have up, the dates are not exact, but rather they reflect when these items started to become prevalent. As HR folks, we're starting to bring more and more to the table, and as a result of that, we're actually being given a seat at the table. Organizations are really beginning to realize that employees, for the most part, are their greatest, largest, and also most expensive asset. So we need to be strategic in how we approach managing and retaining our employees. So things really got going in the early 1990s as reporting started to become a prevalent need within businesses. And because systems were coming on the scene, we had reporting capabilities that we used to not have, or at least not within the time frame that we can now produce reports. And as a result, HR folks started to be freed up from their transactional activities, and they had more time to focus on their employees. So now fast forward to where we are today, 2008, 2012, 2015, 2016, we're really seeing a push towards HR groups being more strategic in the work that they do. So instead of just processing job changes and onboarding new hires, we're being asked to do things like work forecasting and predicting talent and predicting success and identifying trends to act on. So we're really starting to bring, as I said, more to the table. If we think about a core HRIS system, Human Resource Information System, could also be HRIT for Information Technology. It's basically a software solution that manages your employee data. It could be very simple and lean and just act as a database that stores top-of-stack records, or it could be something that is more robust and in-depth and involves workflows and effective dated records that keep a full history for you. It really all just depends on the solution you're using and if that's a good fit for you based on your business needs. On average, companies tend to hold on to their HRIS systems for about 5 to 10 years. So if you're starting to go down the path of evaluating for a new core HRIS system, it's not a forever commitment, but it is kind of a midterm commitment. 5 to 10 years is a little bit of time. So you do want to make sure that you do your due diligence during the evaluation period so that you end up with something that you're happy with and that meets your needs. So at the bottom left-hand side of this slide, I do have some kind of benefits and characteristics of an HRIS system, things that you should look for when evaluating. Mainly the benefit here is that it is a database of employee data. It helps us automate previously manual tasks, and it gives some structure to our approach to HR. So things aren't done manually, where behind the scenes we can kind of do a little of this, do a little of that, because we're in a system and there are certain guidelines and checks and validations built in. Ideally, we have a little bit of structure behind things. When we talk about talent management, this term was actually coined in 1997 by the McKinsey Group. But the concept of putting your employees first and connecting with them to increase retention has been around since about the 1970s. And simply enough, talent management is really a series of processes that provide structure to the employee life cycle with the idea that we want to bring in good employees and we want to keep them. How do we do that? You know, what are our processes for attracting and hiring and developing, training and promoting and rewarding? All the different ways that we hope to engage with our employees. Talent management provides us structure around those processes. So here you can see some common process areas that we typically think about when we hear the term talent management. And you can see it kind of follows a life cycle. So we start in with recruiting and onboarding. We learn how to do our job. In performance and goals, we're evaluated on how we're doing. Assuming we're doing well, we're compensated. We learn some different things. We have a career path, we develop, and then we kind of go back to that learning piece and repeat all over again. So different stages of engagement in the employee life cycle. Here are some of the things that a talent management solution offers. The key thing to take away from here is increased employee engagement, because now we have different activities defined within the employee life cycle, ways to keep our employees engaged within the organization, and ways to keep our organization engaged in our employees. So a lot of give and take and mutual benefits coming out of a talent management solution. In terms of today's presentation, the topic is really long, how to evaluate for core HR, and/or talent management. What I want you to keep in mind is that whether you're here for a core HR solution, standalone by itself, this presentation will apply to you. A talent management solution, standalone by itself, this presentation will apply to you. Or if you're looking for a new core HRIS solution with talent management integrated in, this presentation applies for you as well. So really any type of system that you are looking to evaluate and eventually implement related to your employees, this presentation will cover relevant information. It is my recommendation, if you are in the market for a new HRIS solution, to consider one that has integrated talent, with the benefit being that all of your data, both employee-related data, job and personal information, and then all your talent pieces will be in one fully integrated system. It just helps with the robustness of reporting. Everything's all in one place. You don't have to send data back and forth anywhere. Although that's certainly an option. If you already have a core HRIS solution and you're just looking to do some piggybacking with talent management, that can certainly be done as well. All right, the selection process. You know, this can either be a long or a short activity with your organization. And so my title here within the blue bar says embarking on a journey, because for some groups it's, you know, several months of planning and researching and reviewing before they end up making a selection. And really that's just the start of the process, because after that then you go through actually getting that system into your organization, getting your data in there, getting people trained on it and using it. So it can be a little bit of a journey, and making your selection of a solution is the first step. So what we're going to look at in today's session, this particular area, are some of the steps that you should cover when going through that selection process. So that brings us to poll question number 1, and I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. Is your organization planning to evaluate or currently evaluating a new system? So you can go ahead and use the poll to vote yes or no, and we'll share the results with the crowd so that, everyone kind of gets an idea for what other people are doing. Okay, we've got 60% of the group voting, and we are at right around 50-50. So about half of you are looking to or currently evaluating a new solution, and the other half of you are not going through that process at the moment. Excellent. Let's go ahead and close that. If there's one takeaway that I want you to have from this particular slide about getting started with the selection process, it's really that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to going through the evaluation process. You could be a really big company, a really small company, and your process could be really robust or very light. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. You want to go through and have some common steps to what I'm about to show you, but make sure that it fits your particular organization. You may also find that some of these steps bear repeating, and that you want to have somewhat of an iterative approach. So that as you go through and meet with different vendors and do some researching, that you're making rounds or lists or short lists and kind of going back and repeating some of these activities. So you may have more than one round of evaluations or demos as you go. Okay, starting with the process, the first thing that you want to do, easy enough, is to form an evaluation team. And that may seem like an easy task, but you really want to make sure that you've got the right people on your team. First and foremost, your team should include business owners and stakeholders. I know that's kind of a silly thing to have to write on a slide, but you would be surprised at how many times I come in and meet with different groups, and who I would consider to be a key business holder or a subject matter expert in that particular area isn't part of the team. And for me, working with prospects, the nice thing about having the business owner there or owners is that he or she can clearly communicate to me what it is that they need and what they're looking for. Because at the end of the day, they know more about how your business functions in that particular area than anybody else. So that brings us to our next poll. Are you involving functional business representatives in your evaluation process? So for those of you who went and voted yes to our last poll, go ahead and make a selection here. Okay, great. We are about at 3/4 yes and 1/4 no. So for those of you who are not yet involving business owners in your evaluation process as part of your team, you may want to consider adding them. If they're going to be the ultimate owners and users of a particular solution, then you do want to make sure that their needs are met and at the end of the day that they're happy with the choice. It does help a lot with user adoption. You also want to make sure you've got a member from your IT group if possible, especially if you're considering an on-premise solution. Even if you are considering something in the cloud, where traditionally we don't have to worry about maintaining servers and other technology hardware, you still may have a need to work with IT for some integrations, things like integrating with Active Directory, setting up a single sign-on, that type of thing. So don't discount them from your group, even if you're going with a cloud solution. It's also really essential to have someone from management or an executive sponsor as part of the team. They end up providing direction, a commitment to change, and really their support of your initiative will help drive the other team members to a successful finish. You'd be surprised at how effective having an executive on your team can be in terms of rallying people to a specific purpose and a specific cause. And then finally, we need a team leader. So someone who can coordinate the activities, take in the results from different evaluation rounds, things like that. So make sure that you've got one person who acts as a point or a coordinator for this evaluation process. Next up, take some time to evaluate your needs and your wants, and be sure to look at current pain points. So that might mean reviewing your current systems and your current business processes and identifying what works and what doesn't work. So taking some time and considering what you need to have, what you can't live without, what things are currently giving you trouble and how you think that they can be resolved with a new solution. It may mean that you need to reach out to employees and managers or other end users to get some feedback from them to try to figure out what it is that they like or don't like about the current state of things. You'll probably want to have some discussions about a future vision. Most organizations do not go into the idea of choosing a new HRIS or talent management solution and keeping everything exactly the same. At the end of the day, you want to have some sort of benefit or improvement, if not many benefits and improvements. So take some time to envision what you want that future state to look like for your group and what things then fall into your needs and want categories. Once you've compiled that list and vetted it through the whole team, that particular list will become your list of system requirements. So these are the things that you'd really like to have and the things that you really need to have. While that's going on, I do recommend going through some sort of budgeting exercise. You do want to make sure that you at least have a ballpark number of how much you are able to spend or budget for this particular initiative. And you may want to break them out into key groupings, such as software, hardware, implementation, and support, because at the end of the day, you'll probably have different line items in your budget for each one of those activities. And you'll want to indicate which of those costs are recurring So if you're doing a cloud solution, you may not have hardware costs, but you may have a recurring subscription cost for licenses. If you're doing an on-premise solution, then something like a hardware or a license may be a one-time deal. So do make sure that you're going through a budgeting exercise and coming up at least with some sort of baseline or ballpark number that you can start working with. And then it starts to get a little fun, because then you actually get to start going and looking for solutions to meet the needs of your requirement list. Start your research. I always recommend people on an evaluation team talk to their peers and colleagues within the organization and then outside of the organization as well. So you may find people within your team or company have worked with solutions at their previous jobs, and they may have some opinions about them that they are able to share with you. You may be a member of a professional organization that periodically meets within your city or has lunch and learns that you can attend and pick up information from those other members. You may be on a website such as HR.com where you can ask questions and solicit for feedback. At the end of the day, you want to gather information about systems that interest you, systems that are well rated or well regarded by your colleagues and peers, and come up with a list. Somewhere between 3 and 6 is usually a good number to continue on with the process. And as you've identified this list of people, you can invite them to continue on, engage in your evaluation process. The first thing that you should do is ask them to sign a non-disclosure agreement, because you'll be starting to share information with them about your organization, about your business processes, about your future visions for your organization, etc. You want to make sure that there's a non-disclosure in place. Once that is all done, you move into an RFP or a solicitation phase. And this can be as formal or informal as you need it to be. Some people go through the process of putting together a formal RFP, which stands for Request for Pricing. At a minimum, it should include information about your organization, what you're hoping to achieve, breakouts of your employees, things like numbers, how many are hourly versus salary, where they're located. You'll include your list of requirements and your needs and your wants, and then you'll put a timeline in place, how long they have to provide you information about whether their solution meets your needs and wants. And then it should also include things like pricing, possibly a sample contract, customers who are located in the same area as you or perform in the same line of business as you, so that you can see that other groups that are similar to yours are successful in using this particular solution. So that's kind of the rough gist of the RFP. Your goal is to get back information in writing from a particular vendor so that you can start actually evaluating and comparing one solution against the next. It can be something that you put in rigid standards around, or it can be something a little bit less formal, depending on what it is you're going about and the nature of your business. The next step is to determine the short list. So we started with about 3 to 6 solutions, and now we want to bring it down to about 2 to 3. The short list are people that you are seriously considering. They met all of the base requirements that you laid out in the RFP. Their pricing was somewhat palatable, at least for ballpark purposes. And now you want to engage with them further. So you may invite them to submit additional information about their organization. You may give them additional details that can help them firm up some pricing. But you're going to continue on the evaluation process with these 2 to 3 solutions. So instead of focusing on a large population and going high level with them. You're going to now focus on a smaller number of vendors and get really down into the nitty-gritty and learn more about them. One thing you do want to make sure you're doing is keeping in contact with your vendors during the course of this evaluation process. So if you've shortlisted 2 to 3 different solutions, that means that you have a handful that you didn't shortlist. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and thank them for participating, but let them know that they're no longer in your evaluation cycle. After that, we move into traditionally a demonstration phase. So this can be done either virtually, over the internet, or in person, depending on logistics, where the vendor comes and presents to you their solution, actually brings you into a live environment and highlights areas that meet your needs and requirements. I always recommend for prospects to put together a list of either questions, use case scenarios, things that they want to see or want to have highlighted, almost like a little proof of concept, and send that out well in advance so that when the vendor does make their presentation, that it's really tailored for your group. It just helps everyone make sure that they're getting the most out of the system presentation as possible. Now you'll see a little note at the bottom of my slide. It says you may repeat the above 2 steps a few times if you're starting with a large population or if you're going through a very formal evaluation process. You may invite people in for more than one demonstration. Maybe you start with kind of a high-level overview and then you go down into a deeper dive. It just depends on what your timeline is for finding a solution and how involved the transformation is that you're hoping to make. Getting towards the end, you'll want to arrange calls or meetings with references. Sometimes people skip this step, especially if you've got someone internally who has used the solution in the past and can give an internal reference. But it is always nice to speak to organizations either in a similar location or a similar line of business that are using the solution. That way they can answer some questions for you from the actual user perspective. Sometimes you will, on your RFP, put in for references and vendors will add them to the RFP directly. Others like to make the arrangements and make the connections and set up the meeting for you so that you're not cold calling their customers. That just may be something you want to set expectations around as you're going through the process. And then finally, you'll make a selection. Which particular solution meets the most of your requirements at the best price point with the best demonstration and with the best references. And for some processes, it's very clear cut. There's a well-defined winner the entire evaluation cycle. For others, it can be very close, and it may come down to something such as pricing or ongoing support or something of that nature. It's always nice when you have multiple options to choose from. Once you've identified your top choice, you'll start contract negotiations with them. So I wouldn't end the process until negotiations are complete. You may find during negotiations that there are things you didn't anticipate or some additional costs that have come up. You will want to make sure that you're getting in writing all costs that are going to be associated with the project. It may be, in some cases, estimates for certain auxiliary services or what have you, but at least if you have them identified, then you can plan and budget for them accordingly. And then, of course, when you are done and you've completed the process, you will want to notify those who have won the evaluation process and those who have not, just so that there's closure from all ends. And that brings us to the end of the evaluation process. So those are the steps that I recommend that you follow when going through the evaluation process. You can mix up the order a little bit. Some people will put demonstrations towards the front before they make their shortlist. Some people will do an iterative step. Maybe they'll do a demo before and then afterwards again. You may send out an addendum to your RFP if new requirements come to light. But you do want to make sure you're addressing most, if not all, of those steps during your process. Again, because you're looking to make a 5 to 10 year commitment with this particular solution, you want to make sure that you've covered all your bases. So now let's talk about some factors to consider when actually evaluating a particular solution. It's more than just a functional decision. So there's more than just your needs and wants checklist, although that is a very good place to start. There are just so many different factors that go into whether a solution will be a good fit for your organization or not, whether it is a solution that your employee base is willing to adopt or not. I've highlighted some of the key things that you will want to think about that are sometimes not thought about. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of those areas. First up is your organizational size and geographical footprint. The size of your organization does matter. A large company needs a robust solution. You'll be making a lot of different transactions. You'll be putting a lot of data into that system. A lot of people will be using it on the self-service functionality side. So you need to make sure that the solution you choose can accommodate the size of your organization. The other thing on the flip side that you want to consider is that if you are a smaller organization, you may not need something huge and massive. You may not need excess storage or bandwidth for a certain number of users if your organization's never going to get that big. A second factor to consider that goes hand in hand with the organizational size is the location or locations of your organizational units. So if you happen to be an organization that has offices or employees working in more than one country, then you need to make sure you get a solution that supports all of those different countries. Things to look for are solutions that offer country-specific configuration abilities. So I want to make sure that my address formatting in all the different countries where I have operations is appropriate and relevant to those different locations. If I'm keeping track of national ID numbers and I'm expecting the system to validate them as I enter them in, then my system needs to be able to recognize national ID numbers from several different countries. I also need to be able to do my local governance and compliance reporting for everywhere where I have employees. So I want to make sure that I'm picking a system that offers me those reports. I may also need to have a system that is offered in multiple different languages. This could be if I have an organization with a global presence, or even if I have just a local or one country presence. If a large population of my employee base has a first language other than the one in which I do business, I may need to offer a second language option. Again, we're taking things and making them more employee focused. So giving the solution to our employees in their natural language is a huge benefit. Employee composition. So the nature and makeup of your employee group is something that should be considered as well and compared to the different solutions that you're looking at. There are some solutions out there that are really great for salaried employees, but don't do so well with people who need to enter in hours. There are some solutions out there that have really great self-service capabilities, but if your employees are not used to working with computers, or they don't work in an area where computers are available, then they may not avail themselves to that functionality. Similarly, if you have a lot of field workers, maybe you have a large sales force, or you're a transportation group and you have a lot of drivers, then a solution that offers a mobile application would be a really great choice. The nature of your business matters a little bit too. If you're a professional service group, then your employees may be a little bit more likely to adopt self-service functionality. Maybe they're used to being on computers all day. They have regular access to a computer, to the internet, to your intranet. And so asking them to adopt a new solution with self-service functionality is something that they'd be excited about. You also want to look at any auxiliary pieces that you're currently using that need to work in tandem with your new solution. Something like a time clock if you run a production facility or have a large group of hourly workers who clock in and clock out. You may want to keep your existing time solution and just have it work in tandem with your new HRIS solution. So you'll want to make sure that there's some compatibility there between your existing time clock solution and the new HRIS solutions that you're considering. Also, if your organization happens to be one of those fun ones that has unions, collective bargaining agreements, protected workers, those types of things, then you would want to have a system that can handle those different types of scenarios. So knowing the nature of your employee base and the business that you do and how those employees are organized really does help find a solution that's a good fit for you. Company culture will also play a role. If your employees are used to doing things on their own, used to pulling their own reports, used to being on a computer, then the adoption rate will probably be a little bit higher. If your organization is one that always strives for change, always tries to do the best and be the best, and that's kind of the atmosphere that is prevalent there, then your employees will probably have an easier time adjusting to the idea of a new solution. It is important to note that you can, of course, change company culture through change management strategies, but sometimes it does take a little bit of time. If you are going through a major transformation, then you just may have that time, but you'll want to plan for it accordingly. Another factor to consider is the size and structure of your HR and IT groups. So if, for example, you're a smaller company and you don't have an IT group, or you don't have a very large one, then perhaps a cloud-based hosted solution is an ideal solution for you. I had one customer once, they had, for their entire organization, one IT fellow, and bless his heart, he joined all of our calls. He was a great participant, great asset, but his one requirement was that this system couldn't be something that he had to own or maintain because he was already, at capacity for the work that he could do. And so they ended up choosing a cloud-based solution so that there wasn't any maintenance or work on his part. You do also want to make sure that the functionality is there to support your system's business needs. So that's just not a matter of, what modules do you offer, can you process pay, but do you have the availability to make changes and to put in configuration options that are specific to your organization, maybe even to make some minor customizations in some scenarios. Another key thing is this system that you're looking at available to integrate with other systems? And if so, using what medium, what means, what types of files or APIs or connections, etc. Because although we tend to think of some of these systems as standalone entities, there will likely be the need to integrate with something such as a finance system, a payroll processor, Active Directory, time clocks, a perform and reward system, an expense system, that type of thing. So you do want to make sure that you're choosing a system that plays well with others. You've probably been hearing a lot of buzz over the past 2 years about cloud solutions. So one thing that you do want to consider is, are you looking at a cloud solution or an on-premise solution? And there are certainly pros and cons to both. And I can't say that for everyone a cloud solution is the best option, but it certainly is for a lot of different groups out there. Some of the differences between the two, other than just having hardware in your building or not, cloud solutions tend to be able to scale very quickly because you don't have to provide the hardware. If you were to acquire a new group of employees or start storing additional data, you don't have to go through a resizing exercise for your servers and different hardware components. The solution vendor that you've chosen will handle that for you. Many cloud solutions are what we call SaaS offerings, software as a service, and kind of by their very nature, they offer built-in best practice guidelines and templates to help you optimize and automate your processes. So that may be especially appealing if you're having trouble getting to that point, or if you're starting with next to nothing and looking for something to offer you some structure. It's also good for organizations that have a lot of structure already that are looking at ways to streamline their processes. Traditionally, cloud solutions are monthly subscription-based on a per-user rate, and there are no hardware costs associated with them. On the flip side, for on-premise, there are hardware costs associated with them. You do need to have that hardware to get started and to get going, and you may have to periodically maintain them, resize them, or replace them. You'll also most likely have to do your own software updates. So if new functionality is introduced, that may be something that you need to install in order to take advantage of. Whereas with the cloud solution, new functionality is applied at your convenience. On the on-premise side, bandwidth is controlled internally, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. You could have a lot of bandwidth or not quite enough, depending how things are sized. So taking a look at two different options for system platforms is a factor that you should consider when you're looking at different software solutions. Do you want to make an investment to have these systems running in-house on your own hardware, or are you comfortable putting them into a cloud-based environment? Other factors to consider: whether the solution that you're looking at can support future growth and expansion. There are some companies out there that are just really known for acquiring other organizations or for merging together. And if that's the case, then you may need a solution that scales very, very quickly. Something that can accommodate adding those additional employees and their records and having additional users accessing the system. So being easily scalable may be a factor that is relevant to you. The other thing that you may want to look at, kind of along the lines of growth and expansion, is different locations may pop up with those mergers and acquisitions. So can these solutions be easily accessed from different locations? And if you happen to be a multinational organization, can these new countries that may be now in your geographical footprint be supported in that current solution? Security, I don't know why I've got it last on our list, or close to the end, I should say. But data privacy for your employees should be right at the top of your list. You want to make sure that you're looking at a safe and secure solution that will protect the data of your employees. And data access should only be given to individuals who need to have it. It should be able to be role-based so that HR representatives have access to certain pieces of data, while managers and employees have access to different pieces of data. And there should be built-in audit capabilities. So being able to run change reports to tell who ran something and when and what change was made is very important when it comes to ensuring data consistency and accuracy. So security is something that you should take into consideration when evaluating a system as well. And that brings us to our last item, which is cost and budget. And I know for a lot of organizations, this is something that's at the top of your list. It's a pretty self-explanatory one, but I felt like I should put it on there all the same. When you go through the first part of your evaluation process, we talked about going through a budget exercise, getting a ballpoint figure for the cost of putting in a certain solution, what you think your organization could put aside for this particular endeavor. It is something that you want to make sure you're communicating to your team members so that as they're doing their research and putting their vendors of choice on a selection list, that they're taking budget and cost into account. And you do want to make sure that as you're interacting with these different vendors, that they're giving you all the numbers that you may need. You don't want to just be talking about license costs and then you find out down the road that there's also a setup fee, or that support is not included and that's something that you need to add on separately. So some things that sometimes people forget to communicate around in terms of budget and cost is any implementation or setup fees, any fees for updates. So if new functionality is released, are you able to take advantage of that at no additional cost, or is there some additional charge for having those updates? Data extraction and reporting add-ons. You would think that those things would be included with the solution, but I've actually gone in and replaced some legacy solutions for customers. And one of their, some of their biggest complaints are that they can't extract their data, that the organization that owns their current solution has to do it for them, and that there's a charge for that. So if data extraction and robust reporting is a need for your organization, then you want to make sure that you're either budgeting for an additional cost or that it's included at no charge with the solution you're choosing. Is the solution modular? So are you paying for more than what you need? If it's a package deal and it's including 10 different functional areas, but you only have the need for 5, do you have the option to just pay for those 5 that you need? And if it is modular, can you then add on new modules as you need them and not have to pay for them up front? So that's something to think about, especially if you're considering a SaaS or cloud solution where you pay a monthly subscription fee. Can you just pick and choose when you start using some of these additional modules? And then finally, are activities such as admin training included? You would be surprised sometimes to find that those are listed as additional line items. So you want to make sure that you are budgeting for training. And then as you're discussing with vendors, find out if training is included with the pricing they're giving you. All right, and that brings us to the end of additional factors to consider. Now we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about the characteristics of good and great systems. So it's virtually impossible for a system to do everything that you need it to do. There's no such thing as a perfect system. If I knew one, I would tell you, I would sell it to everyone, and we would all have perfectly running systems. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. As you're going through your selection process, keep abreast of your needs and your wants. Ideally, you will find a solution that has all or almost all of your needs and many of your wants. That would be an ideal scenario. Sometimes things like cost or time to implement will be factors that move you from, one solution to the next. And that is okay. Do not be discouraged by that. There are characteristics of good systems and characteristics of great systems. And you don't always have to have all of the great ones if the good ones will meet your business needs as well. So keep that in mind, especially as you're being conscious of your budget. And keep in mind also that for some, especially smaller organizations or less complex organizations, that what is considered to be a great system may be overkill in some cases. So make sure you're applying these good versus great concepts to the size and magnitude of your organization. So a good HRIS solution. Don't think that it's not good just because it's not great. You'll see at the top, good is good. A good system will meet all of the needs of your organization on a day-to-day basis. And it should probably put reporting as one of its key focuses. Because you're putting data in, you hope to be able to get good and usable data out. It should also address some of the wants that are on your list. So this is, if I could use a car analogy, the Honda of systems. This is something that meets your needs, it has some wants, and it is within your budget, and it fits the complexity of your organization. Some features of a good HRIS solution. In the bottom left-hand corner, you have the ability to store all of the core or basic data related to an employee's personal information. So things like name, address, contact information, information related to their job, what it is that they do, who their manager is, what their employee status is. You should be able to store pay-related data in there so that you've got someone's salary, bonus information, any variable pay or one-time awards, and then be able to do some sort of baseline leave request or absence tracking, some really robust reporting, and then possibly even the option of effective dated data. That means I'm not just storing a single record for an employee, but I'm storing their entire history. On the great side, we're taking it up a notch. So this is a solution that offers more than what a good solution would offer. This is a great solution. It most likely has some fully integrated functionality around talent management. And it shifts from being a transactional-based system to a strategic-based system. And it allows the business partner who's using the system to take on that role as well. So some characteristics of a great solution is that it offers self-service functionality. It probably offers, in this day and age, some mobile application functionality. Configurable workflows that can be sent out for notices and approvals. Onboarding components to quickly move recently recruited new hires into that new hire status within the HRIS component. Fully integrated talent management that allows you to do performance reviews, to look at career and succession planning, to put a training plan in place that will help someone get to the next level of their career. So really a little bit more than what we saw on the good side, with more of a focus on engaging employees and retaining them in your organization. Okay, let's get to the end. Some tips, just a few things to keep in mind as you go through your evaluation process. Don't buy what you don't need. You may often hear a vendor say, well, we're going to throw this in for you, or we're including that for you. Nothing's free, really. At somewhere along the way, you're paying for that. So look to take advantage, if possible, of a modular approach. That means you can pick and choose the different components of a system that meet your needs and wants, and you can exclude out and not pay for those areas that don't. Something that is sometimes overlooked is the idea of ongoing support. So where does that support come from? What exactly is offered? Is there a different cost or fee associated with it? And how do you go about taking advantage of that support? And then last on the list, integration. I've certainly done system implementations without integrations, but more often than not, I do some form of integrating. We're putting all of this employee data in a system. We want to make sure that we can share it across the board. So what can your system do in terms of integration? What means or mediums does it support? Is there a library of pre-delivered interfaces available that can help you relay data back and forth between your two systems? So those are some questions to ask and some things to keep in mind as you go through this evaluation process. All right, let's wrap it up. Key things for going through the evaluation process. Form a good team. Don't try to do it on your own. Make sure you're engaging your business users and key stakeholders. At the end of the day, they're going to be the ones who know about the business, who know what the pain points are, and they're the ones who need to be happy with the new solution that's being put in place. So make sure that they are actively parts of the team. Spend some time thinking about what you want your future state to be. Focus on your needs and your wants, and then how those tie into your budget. Do your research. So talk to your peers and colleagues. Go out to the Gartner review and look at how they're rating and evaluating solutions. Go through the evaluation process and make it iterative if needed. If you're not finding the information that you need, put a new step in there to help those vendors give you the information that you're looking for. Make sure you're taking into account your organizational size and geographic footprint. Those are things that will affect your system. If you're evaluating a system that only supports employees within the US and Canada and you operate in 10 different countries, then that solution will not be a fit for you, no matter how much you like to interface. Evaluate system features and be realistic with your expectations. You're probably not going to find a solution that does every single thing that you need it to. But refer back to your needs and your wants. Try not to sacrifice on your needs, and then get in as many of those wants as you can. And then finally, look for good and great offerings and find out where you fall on that spectrum. Is good good enough? Or are we moving to great, where we can take advantage of some of those fully integrated offerings? And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our presentation. So I've put my contact information up here. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email and let me know. I will open up the question panel here. We've got a few questions in there, and I'll take just a few in about the minute or two we have left. Okay. Question is, if I am being strategic and keeping a system for 5 to 7 years, why would I want just a good system? Can I have a good system with great capabilities? That's an excellent question. The answer to that is you may have budgetary constraints that don't allow you to consider a great system, or your business may be so streamlined or not simple, but not complex, in that a great system may be overkill for what it is that you're doing. Size and complexity and budget will kind of drive us between good and great. Let's see. Another question here is, why is it important to engage IT representatives in the evaluation process if this is going to be an HR solution? I guess it's just a good idea to have an all-around team. Different people who bring different points of views and perspectives. And especially if you're looking at a cloud solution, there may be temptation to exclude IT from the process. And that may very well be the case if they don't have an interest in participating. But at some point down the line, if you are looking at integrating with different solutions, you may find that IT does fit into the implementation portion of the project. So it's always good to have perspective from different people when going through evaluation. Okay, my friends, that brings us to the end of our hour. Thank you so much for attending and participating. And if you should have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Rebecca Murray, for your presentation today, and to Cultivate Consulting, Inc. for sponsoring this webcast. The archive webcast will be available on the HR.com site within 24 hours, and that's located under the archive webcast listing. We at HR.com appreciate your feedback, so please take a moment and fill out the survey at the end of the webcast. And should you have any questions for Rebecca, by all means, utilize that survey to fill your questions in. Thank you once again, everyone. Have yourselves a great afternoon.